This person said, this morning, I probably instinctively somehow used the term, oh, this is Chuck, by the way. I probably instinctively somehow used the term addictive personality in a conversation, just colloquially. And I almost immediately started to wonder if there's any such thing. Anybody want to help me here? So Stanton Peele, you could just probably search Peele addictive personality and find plenty on it. But is there an addictive personality?
Well, there's certainly people who tend to do things excessively, and they often split it from one thing to another. I mean, there are people who, most research about alcohol dependent people find that they've also smoked cigarettes. So those things do tend to travel in batches. There are people that we know who tend to attach themselves to things excessively, including people, for example. And, if you go back to, anxious attachment people who find relationships create anxiety, you'll see that they have that anxiety. They might have experienced it as children and they experience it as adults. Okay. But we're in the business of eliminating addiction. So Uncle Ozzy had some thing, and then he quit smoking, and he didn't become an alcoholic. People's overall anxiety levels tend to decrease as they get older. They tend to form more attachments. So we feel this, saying somebody has got a tendency to recreate addictive behaviors in one area or a lot of areas is worth being aware of, but that's not a thing. There's no addiction gene. There's no personality addiction gene. There's no childhood trauma that, means a person will never be able to escape it and form constructive relationships and avoid destructive addictions. So, we believe there's such a, you can observe people being excessive, addictive in a number of areas, but that's one egg in the souffle. Those same people can improve and improve just as much. How do people who are addicted to cigarettes for, like Uncle Ozzy, 25 years or 50 years, if you say, well, he has an addictive personality, and then when they quit, what then? They lost their addictive personality? No, they kind of redirected it. They calmed down. They made do. Maybe they came to grips. We talked about somebody coming to grips with not being a perfect father. Maybe as they got older, they came to grips with their own excessive tendencies. Maybe they made a joke about it. Oh man, it's hard to get rid of me. You know what I mean? If I'm, coming on too strong, tell me, because people have told me that in the past. That's an example of a constructive way of recognizing your personality and your past without letting it dictate your future, and certainly not your addictive future.
I like that you brought up genes, because you get into the weeds really quickly talking about personality, because you're naturally being reductionist, because you're not going to look at say a baby's disposition in the world and say, all right, he's got the addictive kind of personality, so let's do, and there's no method that anyone's come up with, and I'm glad, because there's not going to be a method. The best you can do is look at people who have had some kind of addiction, and then you can say, what do they have in common? And then you can trace that backwards. It's like, what use is that really? Another problem I have with that is that it doesn't even shake out, even if you just eliminated some of the natural reasons why that doesn't work out. Excessive, there are different forms of excessive. I know people who like to be extreme in a lot of ways, but also, and maybe they formed addictions, but I also know just from working with a lot of high school kids that there are people who like to be extreme and risk taking that are also, they value achievement. And so they're not going to let something like a slip or an addiction kind of behavior get in the way of achievement. So they either don't get addicted or they kick it. And I know some people who are really conscientious, that you might say that's the opposite side of the coin, who are so concerned about getting things just perfect or doing just perfect that bogs them down, and that they form some kind of a relationship with something that numbs them to their anxiety about it. So what are you going to do? You got to just, we all kind of follow the same plan. Personality has only as much to do with it as you want it to, I guess, on an individual level.
Well, we're certainly, yes, the most successful novelist possibly in our lifetime is Stephen King. And he has this description about how his wife went through his trash can and it was filled with pill bottles and empty alcohol bottles and, whatever he's stuffing his nose with, and now he maybe works too much. You know what I mean? He keeps turning out best-selling novels and movies. So, he might have been a little excessive for a time there. And, but excessiveness, in the service of something positive. And of course, what you're pointing out is you never, ever, ever want to give anybody, but certainly a young person, a label that they're going to try and live up to.
Right.
And that, people point out that one distinctive personality distinction with children is that some are shyer than others. That seems... But first of all, those differences are erased often by the time they're adolescents or the time they're adults. And then the fact that somebody's more outgoing or shyer than another person, so what? What's that translate into? Obviously you want to follow what you're best at or what is truest of you. You're probably not going to be a salesman if you're shy. Well, maybe I wouldn't even rule that out. Like you're not going to be, an athlete if you're not physically adept, but whatever your shtick is, whatever your strong suit is, can always be layered into a positive life. Nothing should ever be said either pejorative about a person or so that they're never allowed to get out of that lane. Oh, I know that you don't like to talk to people, so well, you probably won't want to join a group, or you probably won't get married or have a relationship. None of those kinds of statements make sense. I asked the most obvious question to a person I know who's really strongly indebted to genetic theories of addiction. And this is sort of what you were saying. I said, well, how does that help somebody to say, oh, you've got a gene for addiction? And it was as though she had never thought about that. I said, how is that therapeutic? And what we're about, it's both the truth of observing people change, and what we're about is helping people to redeal their deck of cards, their hand of cards that produce the best hand for themselves in proceeding in life.